I love this movie so much. I'm just gonna get it out quickly. Toy Story 2 is my favorite of the series. Just knowing what the production was like makes it all the more impressive. There's a bunch of legends surrounding this movie, from the tug of war over whether it should be a direct-to-video release, to all the data almost being scrubbed, to Disney taking over production while the top Pixar staff was out promoting A Bug's Life, to them having to completely overhaul the movie within a couple months of its November 1999 premiere. Remember, the average Pixar movie takes 4 years to make, so the fact that Toy Story 2, as we know it, was speed ran is unbelievable, but also a bit concerning. Pixar doesn't share as much about their production as back in the old days, but I hope these sorts of crunches never became normalized. Coincidentally, the time frame of the movie's story is also much shorter, only being set across 3 days, but it's gonna feel like you've spent a month with these characters by the end of it.
Okay, I'm officially freaked out now.
The plot is that Andy accidentally breaks Woody's arm, preventing him from being safe to bring to cowboy camp, whatever that is. Then, while saving a toy from a yard sale the next day, he gets stolen by a greedy toy collector who wants to sell him to a museum in Japan. Will Woody get to return home, or will he become friends with Al's toys after learning about his part in the Roundup gang? I bet if you've seen the movie already, you'll be pleased that he ended up accomplishing both. A sequel practically fell into their lap. They're all about expanding the world and pushing the characters further, and since technology had already advanced by quite a bit since the first movie, a lot of the limitations they had back then were gone. There's more locations to visit, and the humans got a lot easier to depict. More of them here as well, not to mention the new toys they had to play with, including the Roundup gang. Jessie is supposed to be a ball of energy, but has some abandonment issues from a previous owner, which make her lash out at Woody for wanting to leave. From the start, it's clear she's not in the wrong or trying to be mean about it, she just doesn't want to lose a potential new friend. When things go her way and she does get excited, there's a sense of relief there. You want her to be happy, but it takes effort. Joan Cusack is asked to do a lot with the character, except for the yodeling, which was provided by the late great Mary Kay Bergman. But they both succeeded in bringing life to one of the most lively yet sympathetic characters in Pixar history. Bullseye is Woody's trusted steed and a big puppy dog for Woody to manage. His special moments are few, but he's adorable in all of them, even when he's galloping heroically at the end. The big puppy dog characterization can't be a coincidence, because not only is Slinky still loyal to Woody, but we also get to see Buster, the dachshund Andy's family got the previous Christmas. Buster is also a lot of fun to watch run around and be friendly with the toys. It's ironic that he's one of the only organic life forms in the franchise to know about the toys' secret and be totally friendly with them. This movie being so dog-friendly was most likely to make up for the first movie being a borderline defamation case. Jessie and Bullseye are also joined by one of the film's main antagonists, Stinky Pete the Prospector, the least popular character in Woody's Roundup, being a crass comic relief, but the toy version of him wound up being a well-spoken dramatic type played by Kelsey Grammer. He almost succeeds in convincing Woody to ditch Andy for the toy museum through a heaping dose of manipulation. It takes a rewatch or two to truly admire him as a villain. Everything he says and does is in service to his own goals, not to befriend Woody. He holds on to a good point that kids eventually reject their toys as they grow up, and twists it into a forceful and selfish plan. One of the best twist villains in animation, because you like him for his motive and the setup to it, not just because it's a big surprise when he gets more publicly malevolent. At first, however, it seems like Al is going to be the main villain, a super greasy toy collector and business owner played by Wayne Knight, who's willing to steal from children, sell toys he's covered with cheese dust, and wear a disguise to look like chicken guys. He covers the love-to-hate corner of the villain roster. There is nothing appealing about his personality in universe, but through sheer luck, he's able to land a chance at being a millionaire. So when he gets frustrated, Wayne Knight's flustered gibberish and frightened line reads are music to the ears. Collectors are awesome people, and truly care about preserving the physical, cultural, and sentimental value of the things they spend so much money on. Hardly any are on the level Al stoops to. He would be hated within the toy collectors scene in real life once news of this broke out. Mrs. Potato Head is the loving but overprotective wife of Mr. Potato Head, and let me say, she did a great job of calming him down. Estelle Harris is still an inspired casting choice, and she kept it funny enough for the screen time she got. Wheezy is a penguin squeaky toy that's been broken, shelved, and neglected until very recently. He's the Tiny Tim of the movie, the poor little guy with a big ukulele/heart, and someone you want to see in a better condition by the end. It's a massive shame this was his only proper role in the series, due to the sudden death of his voice actor Joe Ranft. He had a clear use here, but he also could have had clear uses in the sequels if Joe got to be with us longer. Tour guide Barbie pops up much later in the movie, but she's got a sense of humor to her too. Mattel finally let Pixar use their most popular toy, and it's only for a minor role in Act 2, but this did a lot to make the Barbie brand more appealing, even to me. Still never played with them or anything, but the amount of pink on screen here is absolutely hypnotic. Also popping up in Al's toy barn is Utility Belt Buzz, the latest model, being the same hunk of plastic but with a new hunk of plastic wrapped around its waist. It's pretty funny how they found a way to put the astronaut Buzz personality right back into the spotlight, in case the old Buzz started to feel a bit boring to some viewers, which I don't find at all. Last of all is Zurg, Buzz's arch nemesis. He was mentioned but never seen in the first movie, but now we get to see a toy version of him. Borrowing a lot from Darth Vader, and I mean a lot, they crafted a villain for him that's effectively threatening in the in-universe Buzz Lightyear media, until recently, but making him a toy makes him way goofier, and it's great. The lineup was good before, but now it's much improved with more varied functions and perspectives. When I think of Toy Story, a lot of these characters come to mind, even the ones who only appear in this installment. It's wild how much of an impact this left on the series, until you rewatch it.
Oh, it's just a popped seam, easily repaired. You should consider yourself lucky.
Lucky? Are you shrink-wrapped? I am missing my arm!
Toy Story had some valuable lessons in it, which the characters have clearly taken to heart in the sequel. In the first act of the first movie, the most heroic thing Woody did was stage a meeting. Here, he saves Wheezy from a yard sale, showing that he's learned something about the value of toys, that no matter if they're Andy's favorites or not, they aren't disposable. This hasn't got much to do with the arc he goes through in this movie, it's instead here to say that these characters aren't going to be learning the same things over again. That applies to Buzz as well, or at least one of them. Andy's Buzz still exhibits some of the same traits he did before, like strong leadership skills and a willingness to jump into action, but he's since become smarter and more self-aware of his role as a toy. This is still the Buzz Lightyear you know, even if his view of the world has matured. And you've eventually got the utility belt Buzz to bring back that naive brickhead quality. Much like how Tom Hanks turned in a stellar performance for the first movie, Toy Story 2 is clearly Tim Allen's big day out, since he has to pull double duty as two Buzzes, playing both the current and past incarnations of the character. Best performance of his career? Nope. This isn't to say Tom Hanks is slacking this time, because they still give him some wild things to say, and he does so with ease. This movie is a massive improvement for Andy's other toys. Bo Peep still doesn't have a big role, but you can tell she's more supportive to Woody now. It's Ham, Potato Head, Rex, and Slinky who head out to save Woody with Buzz, and of them, Slinky has the most narrative use. His elasticity is utilized from the start to the end of the adventure, plus he can bark quite well. Ham and Potato Head are here to bicker, but while Ham doesn't offer much to the cause, Potato Head is salvaged. He saves lives in this one, and for that, those lives are eternally grateful. Of all these little guys, I think it's great that Rex has the most active role of all next to Buzz. They weren't playing favorites, they were just leaning into the sidekick tropes with him. I'm sure many 90s kids could relate to his struggle with the Buzz Lightyear game, and how getting a strategy guide boosts his confidence drastically. This plot point actually came from Andrew Stanton's son getting his dad to read him strategy guides at bedtime. While most kids went to sleep learning not to talk to strangers or to avoid playing in dangerous areas, Ben Stanton was learning where all the Jinjos were in Mad Monster Mansion. Father of the Year. So it's good that all these toys are given something to do, and way more than in the first movie, but the biggest challenges in this story are being pushed onto Woody and Jessie. Woody goes from hating being on a shelf, unloved by Andy, to getting swayed to the idea that being stuck behind glass in a museum is a good way to spend the rest of your days. It's a shocking 180 when you compare these scenes, but the build up to that decision, which isn't entirely his anyway, is so gradual that you can hardly catch it. It's meant to be alarming when the toys finally meet up with Woody and are saddened by his decision. It's Stinky Pete's hope that he did as good a job manipulating the audience as he did Woody. Jessie's role in all this is quite sad too. She had a more scarring breakup with her owner and was likely far more vulnerable to Stinky Pete's suggestion. Her quickly getting mad that Woody still has a strong relationship with his owner is completely justified. She hates being in storage, as well as the idea of having an owner altogether, and is now at odds with someone she's just tried to befriend. It's unknown how long Jessie's been in Elle's apartment, but my guess is a pretty long time, long enough for Stinky Pete to get through to her. And here's exactly why he's a great villain. His language. He seems so nice and fatherly when we first see him. Maybe he is Woody and Jessie's father in the show, who knows? We could whip up demand for Pixar to make an actual Woody's Roundup series, but back to my point about Pete and his language. They really want you to take every sentence he says in two different ways upon rewatch, both as ways of informing Woody of the situation and as ways of influencing him to join them in the museum. Even after he comes out of his box, right up until his final desperate tirade, he's good at getting his points across, forceful as he gets. And with the context of the later movies in mind, a lot of the points he makes about the relationship between toys and their children have ground.
Idiots! Children destroy toys! You'll all be ruined! Forgotten! Spending eternity rotting in some landfill!
He was an unpopular toy. He doesn't know what it's like to be loved. From his point of view, only knowing Jessie and a non-verbal horse, the only thing a toy has to look forward to is being donated or thrown away. It's a cynical point of view because his whole existence has been pretty cynical. Toy Story 2 came out in a time before it seemed like every other Disney and Pixar movie wanted to add a twist villain, just because it was cool and made the audience think. But Pete is such a good one that he doesn't even strike me as that anymore. I'd liken him more to Mother Gothel from Tangled, someone who'll pretend to be nice and caring, but if you've been through a bad ordeal with someone like them, you'd know they're up to no good right away. And I've been avoiding using the word gaslight, because that isn't necessarily the same thing as manipulation, but Pete actually does use gaslighting tactics that I haven't mentioned yet. The whole ordeal with the remote is the best example, but there's also him seeming to trick Woody and Jessie into believing that the final episode of Woody's Roundup, Woody's Finest Hour, never aired, to make them and their show seem more mistreated than they were. It seems it actually did air though, as Woody shows his friends a scene from the penultimate episode, and the VHS plays as they continue to talk until we get a final song number and credits scene, where everyone seems to be fine and dandy. This could be an entirely unrelated segment, one that doesn't need continuity with the events of the serial, but I want to know what you think. Did Woody's Finest Hour really get dropped, or was this a part of Pete's plan? It's in his nature. With all these new philosophical ideas, it's wise that they reserved their connections to the first movie more as callbacks than anything. There's a lot of clever references to the predecessor. Pixar was always great at references, so that's no surprise. But again, it's great how they chose the ones that could best serve a narrative purpose here, like Al's Toy Barn still having an overstocked Buzz Lightyear aisle. Pizza Planet's trucks still being dirty pieces of junk that are convenient to hop into. Woody called Buzz a few names early on in the first movie, but is quick to correct Pete here. There's a few more conveniences in the plot progression here, but they've always got a way of foreshadowing them. This might also be the most commercial of the Toy Story movies, as the product placement for real toys and brands is more prevalent here. But that doesn't make it any worse of a film or any less of its own thing. If anything, the Barbie jokes in particular had a positive impact on the brand going forward. Mattel used to be very protective of how she was depicted in the media, but now a lot of their Barbie media has some manner of self-aware edge. Long story short, Jodie Benson walked so Margot Robbie could run. Michael Keaton walked so Ryan Gosling could break the sound barrier. The visual symbolism is in top form here, one of those things that gets better when you learn to think about movies as a prime medium for metaphor. There's the irony of Buzz and the gang using traffic cones to cross a street, an incredibly unsafe plan that causes serious damage. Woody's contemplation over going back to Andy while looking down a dark, uncertain air vent. Getting shelved, getting lost under the bed, getting tied up. Those are both literally what happens to the toys, but can also be metaphors for their situation. Serendipity is the name of the game here. I dare say the music is also better than in the original. You've Got a Friend in Me is still there, now in a jazzy party mix, plus 2 other songs. The ones composed for the first movie are classics, but I'd take Woody's Roundup over Strange Things, and When She Loved Me 100,000 times over I Will Go Sailing No More. All of them are great songs, both on their own and in the context of the movies, even though Wheezy's got the singing voice of a 9-year-old boy. The score is also way more fun, having a more adventurous tone than the perilous tone of the first movie. Listen to some of the background tracks for the first and second movies back to back, and you can hear a major difference. 2's a lot friendlier, as is the animation. This was only made 4 years after the first Toy Story, but the improvements are staggering. The humans have actual hair and skin textures. Put Scud and Buster side by side, and it's clear they're getting the hang of real-world anatomy. They've got some particle simulators going so they can include dust. It's not always convincing dust, but it's still a big leap forward. The first Toy Story had such a small, boxed-in world that, of course, the sequel would need to broaden the scope, and their computers were good enough to do that as well. No longer are we confined to a single street for most of the movie. We've got an alien planet, busy road, large toy store, impossibly tall hotel, and a seemingly endless conveyor belt of airport luggage. When you saw this as a kid, you thought all airports had them this big, didn't you? I'd argue the tech that made the biggest leap forward with Toy Story 2 is actually the lighting. Pixar's early productions tended to have very basic and rigid lighting from the beginning to the end of a scene. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But in Toy Story 2, if something really good or bad happens, the colors and shadows will change to let you know. A good example is when Andy rips Woody's arm. All the warmth is sucked out of the room right then and there. But my very favourite's when Woody first notices all the Roundup memorabilia. This is an obvious one since we see Bullseye turning on a light, but it has the opposite effect of the last scene. It's a heartwarming moment of discovery. It went to show how important lighting can be in computer animation, but it's a trick I haven't seen many movies pull off half as well as this one. Going back to details, even Andy's new wallpaper is brilliant. It used to be blue with clouds to fit with Woody's Western theming, but now it's blue with yellow stars, which could fit either the motif of Woody's sheriff badge or Buzz's world of space exploration. It's a little change to show they're his 2 favorite toys now, no guessing favorites anymore. This is a masterpiece, so it's quite hard to pick my very favorite scenes. We could start with the epic logo reveal though. It still excites me every time. The video game opening is wonderful too. We get a taste of what Buzz's adventures look like, which is good at setting up that he's still a popular and valued toy. I still hope someday Pixar decides to make a Super Nintendo game based on this scene. Release it on a cartridge today, it'll be hilarious, I promise. Woody's Nightmare is an excellent dip into fantasy too. Scary? Yeah, but not too scary. They no longer had Jeffrey Katzenberg around to hand them a note saying needs more cockroaches. Woody's Roundup is a hoot and a holler too. The show because it ignited my love for cheap old media and how unintentionally goofy it can come off, and the scene of Woody playing with all the memorabilia, which is my favorite part of the movie, always puts me in a good mood. We still get weird merchandise like this today if the property is big enough, but licensees were way more experimental back in the 50s. They'd make anything for a buck, but that's to our benefit in this scene. When She Loved Me is the first tragic backstory in Pixar's catalog, or at least the first of You Can Still Sleep at Night. The song hits hard, and so does the story to go along with it. It's not flashy in any way, just the tale of a girl growing out of playing with dolls from the perspective of one. The moral of the story is never clean your room. The final chase to the plane is awesome too. Not as iconic as the original's climax, but way more epic in my opinion. Woody gets to save Jessie, Jessie gets to save Woody, and Bullseye gets to go for some intense walkies. Planes and airports at nighttime are a heart-pounding combination, but it must be even more so for toys. And of course, the bloopers are hilarious. Mostly. There's a dud here and there, but this is something Pixar should have kept up. You don't need a dance party ending all the time. Sometimes, just seeing the cast joke around and miss their cues is a potential mood lifter. As for least favorite scenes, I can only think of one, the cleaner. Even then, it's more of a love-to-hate scene. The star of it is that creepy old guy who plays chess with himself in an earlier Pixar short, and I never liked that short much either. It's still an effective part of the story, and Woody getting Andy's name painted off his boot is a bitter capper. You gotta kill your darlings sometimes, pick out the least ripe fruit if you're sure you want them all. I can't think of much wrong with Toy Story 2, and not out of nostalgia. I liked the first movie a bit more as a kid, but this one's grown on me the more I've thought about everything it got right. This is where Pixar became the home of genius. If you were to ask me what the golden age of Pixar was, it would be the period from Toy Story 2 to Toy Story 3. This is a decade-long stretch where their storytelling and artistic prowess only seem to keep getting better. Cars is the only major critical outlier in this era, and even then, people just considered it fine until the sequels got churned out. You can thank Toy Story 2 for the tight plotting, colourful worlds, attention to detail, and resonant allegories in all these movies. Way more than you can thank Toy Story or A Bug's Life. Being a Pixar kid in the 2000s was so elating. It made it seem like the company was indestructible. Guess what? It wasn't.
Buzz, are you coming? No, I have a lot of catching up to do with my dad.